And so I was involved with a lot of labels, so a lot of great artists would come through San Francisco. And on the weekends, sometimes you go, I had Rolling Stones coming into town. Ironic is when I got into the record business, one of the record companies that I was working for, James was recording for.
Hey,
So
Jeff.
he'd come into San
Look like
Francisco
your
and we
Uncle
do TV
Coke.
shows.
So we want to welcome you. This is Bay Legends, and my name is Simon Russell, your host, and Zina Escovedo.
Yes.
And you are watching the Bay Legends show. We are so excited to have Mr. Jeff Trager, who is a promoter from through the 70s, who's done incredible things with so many different artists. And we're going to go through his career. People like Sly and the Family Stone, the Eagles, Rolling Stones, Millie Jackson, Tina Turner. He has worked with all these people, and in fact, created some of these people's careers. So welcome, Jeff Trager, to our show. We appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Absolutely, man.
My old friend.
We know it's been a while. We were doing all kinds of work with before the COVID came along, and you were helping us out, getting us shows, and then we all got hit. And what's been going on with you in this last year?
I wound up doing some live streaming shows. I did one with Pete.
Oh yeah.
Escovedo, and then I'm doing one with Lenny. I do one with Lenny Williams.
Nice.
The fantastic Negrito, who's up for his third Grammy. In the upcoming Grammys.
Yeah, you just did a show with him, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it went well.
Yeah, he's kind of reminds me of Slots. Lenny Kravitz meets Prince.
Yeah, he's got it.
Out of Oakland.
Yes,
and Pablo.
Yes. So Zina, why don't you ask some questions? I'm gonna leave it up to you.
Yeah. Hi, Jeff.
Darling.
Haven't seen you for a while.
It's been a while. Yeah, I don't remember when. Which did you ever go to the Voices of Latin Rock shows at Bimbo's?
No, just know that I'm Pete Escovedo's favorite child. That's all you need to know.
Okay. Well, Coke was your uncle.
Yes, Coke was my uncle. Great musician.
I love Coke.
I know he was incredible.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you because I love all of your stories that I've seen throughout all of your interviews, and of course I know you personally. When my father comes and plays at so many gigs that you have done and promoted, you have just an amazing life. And I know that it usually starts with people that have influenced us in our lives. And what I love is that I was reading, I saw a couple pictures of you and your dad, Sidney, and your grandfather, Oscar.
No.
Yes. And then also I saw a name that I think is probably really important to you. And I forgive me if I say it wrong, but it's Tony Abruzzo.
Yes.
Yes. So tell me about those kind of people that have impacted you, because I know that usually on our shows, we ask a lot of music questions and about musicians and everything, but it's really more so of people that have really impacted our lives personally and how they have made such a difference in our lives. And you had such great mentoring. And I want to know about those people.
Well, outside of my I don't think anybody that's more important to me personally than Tony. I've known Tony since, the mid 60s. I think we were all going to City College in those days, and we stayed friends. We have friends that, in fact, we get together every Christmas. her husband, her first, Freddie Abruzzo, has a Christmas party every year. And we all get together. There's Herbert, there's Greg Rico from Sly and the Family Stone, there's Michael Caravello, Bruce Cohen, who manages the Doobies. You got all these power players, and everybody leaves their egos at the door. We're all, we're all friends, and we've been friends 35 years. We've been doing this Christmas party, so it's wonderful. But for Tony, I had an alcohol and a substance abuse problem back in, well, let's see. I would say pretty much in the 80s. And then Tony was my friend, and she said, look, you got a problem. And she sat me down, little place called Sneaky Pete's. You call Sneaky Pete's on Lombard.
I don't remember that. No.
I don't either.
And it changed to Busciotti's. Anyway, he comes in and she says, all right, sit down. You're a great guy. You got so much talent. He says, but you can't drink. You can't drink. She says, I'm gonna help you out. So she drove me up to St. Helena's and she checked me in. 28 days there, and it basically saved my life. And Tony picked me up, came to visit me. So I say enough about Tony. She's just a saint. Wonderful. Yeah.
I saw also on your Facebook page that you received your coins, and I have family members that are the same. And so I truly understand the growth and the hardship and the path that you have to go through to get even to that one coin. The first coin is just amazing, and it's just incredible the journey that you've taken also.
Yeah, God bless.
Thank you.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Yes. And so I saw a picture of you in a 1954 Bentley.
Oh no, where did you find that one?
Gotta watch out.
I have my sources.
Made that picture. Go ahead.
It says the stories that old lady could tell, but I want to know. I want to know some of those stories. What did you do in that 1954 Bentley?
Oh God, are you really want to know? I've done it. No, that was a legendary car. I used that my calling card in when I was doing radio promotion, and I drove that sucker for 13 years. Ray Rowley from Santana and Journey bought me that car because he knew that he had one, and he knew I loved it. So he says, I know you pay me back. So he bought me that car. I kept that car. I drove it every day, 13 years, 14 years. And yeah, there's stories. Front seat, back.
Front seat, back, good,
But it was great because people knew me all over the city, where I went. And, here comes, because I call it, my nickname is the Bird, so they call me. So I made it, the license plate was D Bird because
I love it.
I couldn't spell TAC. So anyway, it was a great car. I love that car.
It's a great
Wow.
picture. Great picture.
Unbelievable.
Go ahead.
That's,
You can chime in too.
I'm just enjoying the story. So I guess we should start. Like, where did you get your start? I know that you did a concert. What was it? You threw a concert in 1971 for a friend that was wrongly accused of something. Is that where you got your start?
Yeah, he was a friend I've known since since the early 60s. And he went over to Spain and he got busted coming into Africa and on some trumped up charges. I mean, whatever. But so I threw this concert down at the Family Dog. Used to be Playland at the
Okay.
beach, and Chet Helms, who was putting on shows at the Avalon Ballroom, opened up this new place. And so on a Monday night, we did 3,500 people.
Wow.
$5 a piece. But the night before, my headliner was Mark Almond, who used to play with John Mayall. They used to get an album called The Turning Point. Well, they were opening up the night before for Elton John. And Elton John was just starting to happen. And Bill Graham, of course, was the promoter.
He was the guy.
And he put on the show at Civic Center. He does 4,000 people. The next night, I've done one before, but I said, I got to raise money to get my friend out of jail. Mm-hmm. So Graham got really mad, really off.
Yeah.
Well, because here I did 3,500 people. I'm not a concert. And so we really, he was yelling at me and I was yelling at him. And I said, you're not even from here. That thing to do, And so I said, just a matter of hang up first. And so he slammed the phone down, and took me a year to be able to go see my own artists at his venues. He wouldn't let me in.
Oh, that's some beef. That's some old beef, huh?
Unique. He was different. I mean, his family was in Hollywood, and he came from through Europe and came and wound up in New York, and he came to San Francisco. I think it was in the mid '60s,
right?
And he started doing he was working with a thing called the Mime Troupe, and then he got into doing promotions in his shows. But he was the guy. He was.
Yeah, he was.
They're very intense, but we made up, and then we wound up actually playing softball one day. And he says to me, "Okay, Mr. Hotshot Promoter, who should I put on the next day in the green?" And I says, "Well, I got Def Leppard, the Scorpions, and a guy named Pat Travers." And he goes, "Pat Travers," and this guy sold more than 5,000 albums out of One Tower Store alone. That'll give you San Jose, and you need. That was the hottest rock market in the business. So he added Blue Oyster Cult and AC/DC and sold out the place, and then we remained friends. Until he passed away.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was good working with him. There was 3 guys that were really important in the record business when it exploded. It was Bill Graham, it was Russ Solomon, because he's the one who started Tower Records,
right?
And Tom Donahue started Underground Radio,
right?
KX, then KSAN, and it was kind of funny when I got out of rehab. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I started doing college promotion, radio promotion. And I went and saw Russ, and he gave me an NRAC in all his stores to display my product, and that was worth millions.
Wow.
Well, if you go into a grocery store, an NRAC is all the hot stuff. So he says, "Jeff, I'm gonna give you an NRAC." All his, yeah.
Wow, you got that's like gold.
Oh yeah. That's a real mensch.
That is that's great. So you worked in an era, like probably my favorite era in time, which was the late '70s, when you had the Millie Jacksons, also like Angela Bofield. That was probably my favorite era of music because there was so much orchestration. Can you tell us about working with Millie Jackson?
Well, Millie was one of our artists on one of our satellite labels that we had that Polydor had, and she came out with an album. She only sold basically to the African American audience, and pop radio wouldn't play her, so she came out with a couple of albums, and then she came out with an album called "Feeling Bitchy."
Right.
And out of nowhere, I thought, Jesus, you know what I'll do? I'm gonna go hire one of those planes that has the banners and fly. I'm gonna have it fly over Monday Night Football because the Oakland Raiders.
Right.
And that's when there was no fly zone. You could do that.
Right.
So here's a plane that's going over. You can't see it on TV, but Frank Gifford, who's one of the announcers in those days with Howard Cosell and Don Meredith, he goes, "Who's Millie Jackson?" And Meredith, she said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, she's not doing too good." And in fact, she's feeling pretty bitchy. Now you got to understand how big Monday Night Football was,
Yeah.
So the next day I get a call from the record company, and they said, "My God, we're getting phone calls like crazy." I says, "Who did that?" And I says, "Who do you think?" I says, so it took her from 500,000 units, is what she usually sold, to 4 million plus in a matter of 2 months. And then the next song that she came out was called "If You're Not in Love by Monday." It was written by Merle Haggard, and all these pop stations added Millie Jackson. So it was that's what it took. A lot of these stations in the old days, they had what you call they would only play so many R&B artists. They had a quote. It was an unnamed. It was a quota. They just nobody said what it was, but it was. They play Sam Cooke, they play Al Green, they play James Brown, and then outside of that, once in a while you get another artist that And then Berry Gordy came out with in Smokey started Tamla Motown. That changed everything. Changed everything. And all of a sudden, the pop stations are going, "Geez, I'm playing 10 or 12 R&B records. What?" So he changed everything. The whole music radio scene just absolutely changed. And why it took that long, I don't know. It's like Jackie Robinson. Why did it take Jackie so long to? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a sign of the times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a good investment, right? Because what was it? You paid something crazy like $100 and what something dollars?
$187.
Oh my gosh, good investment.
The funny part about it was the label came into town, the president or the head of promotion, and he hands me a check, and I'm thinking it's going to be $5,000 because do you know what 3.5 million records are worth? $50.
What?
And I said, "Here, you need it more than I do."
Wow.
But that, now Millie's headlining everywhere. I went down to Circle Star, and we had Roy Ayers, and we had Ray Goodman and Brown, and I walked backstage. I'm only white person in the place, and here comes Millie, and she sticks her head out of the dressing room, and she goes, "You must be Jeff Trager." And I said, "Yeah, it's me." She says, "Get in here." And so she pulls me into her dressing room, and she gives me this big kiss. I'm going, "I want to thank you." I go, "Ooh, yeah."
Thank me, baby.
That was worth your $187.
There you go. You got your money's worth.
I got to keep the job for another 6 months.
Wow. So you got to work with. Now there's another big name, or there's been a ton of big names, but a really huge person in your life was Tina Turner.
Yeah.
And you admired her a great deal. Tell us about your interactions with Tina.
Well, when I first started, I was working a label called Blue Thumb Records, and I Ike and Tina Turner. A box came in and I opened it up and it was Ike and Tina fold out album, Whiteface Eating Watermelon. And I said, so I'm supposed to take the KDIA and K-Soul? But it was, but the music was great. And there was a song on there called I've Been Loving You Too Long that Otis Redding wrote and had a hit, back in a couple years earlier. And so they went on it right away. And so I went over to KFRC and they said, oh, we can't play it. It's too black, too raunchy. I says, what do you mean too black? He says, yeah, well, it's just, because they never played Ike and Tina Turner.
Right.
And I said, well, I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't. I was in here with the James Brown record last week. So tell me what's the difference here? So he says, we'll never play this record.
Wow.
So what I did is I went back to KDIA and I said, the guy's name was John Hardy. He was the program director. And he says, tell you what I'll do. We're going to put it in power rotation. Okay. And we're going to play it until we can't play it anymore. And I worked the same deal with K-Soul. So they put it in power rotation for a month. And all of a sudden, the album starts really selling and the singles sell. So what I did was I ordered a whole bunch of singles from the label and I got in my car and I went over to Richmond and I
wow.
It's not exactly the best place for me to go to and at night. And I go into Oakland and I go to stores on Divisadero Street. There was some mom and pop stores that were black owned. And I said, report my record. So they report the single. Now KFRC gets all the reports and they add the record.
Wow.
But they only played it at night. They would never play it in the daytime. They just really felt that it was too raunchy. Tina never liked singing it because it just was, if you see footage of her, it was a very suggestive record, the way that Tina did it, the way I choreographed it. And in fact, it's a great track because in the background, Tina had a way of forgetting lyrics and Ike would mouth the words so that Tina remembered. We left it in the track and it's there and it's a great song. And she did a record for Phil Spector called Deep Mountain High. And Phil Spector loved Tina and he says, I would like you to sing this song. Well, Ike didn't like that because all of a sudden, instead of being Ike and Tina, Spector just wanted Tina's voice. So he brought her into the studio and Ike was flipped out. I think that was the end. I think that's when they really, really kind of split because he was really jealous and Ike was, I never seen him hit her, never, but he'd get crazed, I could tell you some stories about me and we don't have time, but so anyway, the record goes on. Jagger hears the record and he puts Ike and Tina Turner on the Rolling Stones next tour with B.B. King.
Wow.
And a guy named Terry Reid did a song, English guy. But anyway, now they're playing and opening up for the Rolling Stones. And if you remember, the Rolling Stones had a way of picking opening acts like
they did.
Yeah.
In Living Color and Prince and acts like that. Well, what that did for Ike and Tina Turner was unbelievable. They got $1 million deal from United Artists.
Wow.
And that's when they did Proud Mary. And she also, out of that breaking that record, I got her on a show with King Curtis, opening up for Ray Charles, and Ike and Tina opened up. King Curtis, Aretha Franklin, special guest Ray Charles at the Fillmore.
Incredible.
And yeah, it changed her whole life. And and afterwards, she called me into her dressing room. She had a little dressing room about this big, and she was sweating like crazy. And she said, she grabbed my hand. She says, I want to thank you for what you did. He says, a couple of years ago, we were playing bowling alleys. They used to play the circuit.
Yeah,
and sometimes they play bowling alleys. And they had 2 cigar boxes, and it'd be $1 for the house and $1 for the band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was one of the highlights in my life, because after they broke up, nobody would sign Tina. And a friend of mine who was working for Capitol Records signing artists, A&R, he says, I love you. I love that song. I love the way that you do it. And he put his job on the line, and he begged the president of Capitol to sign Tina. Well, he had 2 songs for her. What's Love Got to Do with It? And Private Dancer. And he produced Private Dancer, brought in a bunch of other producers, and then Tina took off from there.
Yeah.
I remember those songs very well. For me, it was the beginning of MTV, and every day there was a new premiere of some new artists, and it took a while for them to bring Black artists on. But I remember when Tina Turner's video came on, and I was like, what a powerhouse. She was phenomenal, and just unbelievable. And of course, her stage, there's not many people who could hold her own like she could on stage. She was just, high octane. It was unbelievable.
I think that they always had an exciting act. It's just that a lot of people never saw them before or never heard them. And, once she got on the radio and crossed over, okay, that's what it took. You have to hit the masses. Well, once people saw them and saw how good they were, and, they were so exciting. It's like in the old days, you used to see them at little clubs in San Francisco. And the guy who got me in the record business was George Moscone. And George, I took him to see Stan Getz. And then he says, I want to see Ike and Tina Turner. And I took him there. Now, the place is so small that the band's sitting in the first 2 rows, and the Ikettes, Ike and Tina, are on the little stage in this little club. And George, who's the senator of California at that time, guess he was one of the senators. But anyway, he says, I want to meet Tina. And I says, I don't think that's a good idea, George. You see that guy next to her? I says, that's her husband. I said, that's Ike Turner. I says, I hear he's crazy. George liked to have a good time. George liked to get around, man. He was really something. He got me in the record business.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, he knew Herb Alpert.
So just kind of like, it sounds like one thing led to another, just, being, now, what was it about you that these people would just give you these kind of opportunities? I mean, were you a tenacious kind of person? I mean, obviously you're brilliant with the marketing, but why were these people just handing you these opportunities?
Well, it's just timing. Timing. I was working as a bellboy, and I met George Moscone, and George liked me. I don't know why.
There you go. It must be something.
Well, I was really, really small in those days. I think, I think he wanted me to make me a jockey. But we'd always talk music, and he said, come on. I told him about this place called the Both And Club on Divisadero Street. And he said, well, we'll go listen to some music. And I says, oh, this is cool. I'm hanging out with the senator, before. And then he came back as mayor, and unfortunately, he got killed. But it all started, who knows? It all started by chance meeting somebody like George Moscone. I don't know what I would have done, I had no idea. I just was good at, I love music. I go out to state to study, and I go and put money in the canteen, and I'd play all these obscure records that I'd find. God Bless the Child by Eddie Harris, different things. And I liked Sinatra when I was 16. I liked Brubeck when I was 16. You know,
There you go.
and these opportunities. My father worked 3 jobs. You know, I always worked 3 jobs. I'm just a, you know,
You're hard worker.
yeah, I got a lot from my father that way. You know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, well, you know, just by the sound of it, it sounds like just, you know, I always tell on these episodes, we always talk about like the power of like really connecting with individuals is such a powerful force to move you forward. And of course, your choices, the type of people that you associate with, and you know, those kind of special friends are what, you know, kind of propel you forward. And just being a pleasant person, you know, in general. So I think you know, you've always been that way. So we you know, and I wanted to mention here that you also worked with Sly and the Family Stone. That was another huge group here. It's definitely a pioneer in the Bay.
Well, I didn't work with Sly directly, but
Okay.
but what I will say about that musically, when I was going to City, Sly used to come out with his original band and play at City College. And I got to know Sly a little bit. But when I heard them play, that changed everything musically for me. I had never heard anything like that. And I've never seen a group like that, because, you know, they're one of the first integrated bands that made it.
Right.
Booker T. I mean, I'm sure there was other ones, but, you know, Sly had women, and he had an Italian drummer, had a Mexican player. And
Yes.
he said, I never noticed. I said, it's the work. You know,
Yeah.
Sly was a genius.
Yeah, he was.
A musical genius. He just had his demons.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, you know, unfortunately, he didn't make it to. He could have made it to one of the places you made it to, Santa Elena. You might have been in a better place, but yeah, he definitely had his genius. He was a genius, and probably still is. You know, he's still around.
Well, yeah, it's very sad, because there's very few artists that have attained, you know, his stature. I would say that, you know, he's on the Mount Rushmore up there. That's what I call it, with Stevie and Prince, Donny Hathaway, Ray Charles.
Yeah, my favorite.
Curtis Mayfield. I got to work with Ray Charles, and I got to work with Curtis Mayfield and people like that. They just were on the labels that I worked. So
They're just phenomenal musicians. Yeah.
And
Now,
Sly,
what about Tower Power? I know you've done some work for Tower Power.
well, then again, my involvement with Tower was, I heard that they were out of contract with San Francisco Records that Bill Graham had. And I guess he had too many artists, or, you know, he did so many shows that he didn't give as much, you know, concern to his record label. It was a cool label. He had Cold Blood and Elvin Bishop on it, but they were out of contract. And so I got people to come into San Francisco and listen to Tower. The label that I was working for was Elektra Records. Jack Holzman was the president, and Jack signed Butterfield Blues Band, which was, you know, they were incredible. But he signed Judy Collins, and he signed The Doors, acts like that, Bread. Very successful. Started not, but he didn't get it. He didn't get Tower, because when I brought him the tape, I brought him a tape with "You're Still a Young Man" on it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And what else was on there? Might have been Down to the Nightclub.
Woo!
And he says, I've seen them before. They don't impress me. So really? So I went back to the Warner Brothers office, and I was yelling and screaming at the guy who ran the office, and he says, what are you mad about? I says, the guy don't get it. These guys are great. They're good. And anyway, so he says, do you know Joe Smith? And I says, yeah, he's the president of Warner Brothers. And he's sitting right behind me. Listen to me yelling and screaming. So he calls me. He says, give me my secretary. He tells the guy who runs the office. He puts the deal through right in front of us.
Wow.
And my friend got a letter from Joe Smith years later saying, you know, he thanked him for that. But I'm the one who, you know, who turned them on. You know, that little thing that I did got them signed.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. But the best thing for me was that Joe said, would you like to do A&R for me and look for some groups? So he let me go in the studio with some of the best engineers in the business. Jimmy Gaines, who did a lot of stuff with Otis Redding, and the Atco people, the Allman Brothers, and Glenn Clark, and these were great engineers. And I go in the studio. First act that I went in there was with Sylvester. I don't know if you remember Sylvester.
I do, yes.
He was one of the first openly gay performers.
Right.
And so he came in with his band, and I said, look, come back tomorrow night, because his band was terrible. So I called up Neil Sean, and I said, get me a rhythm section. And he says, well, I know these girls in Oakland that we can put on the songs. You know, it's the Pointer Sisters.
Woo!
So they came in the next night. We had a song called, I think it was You Got a Friend. It was a Jeff Taylor song. And so we had Neil, and Neil was smoking, and I never arranged a song in my life. And I took the song and I broke it down, and Neil and I, he helped me, and the girls were singing on it, and it got him a deal. It was really a lot of fun. And then I took Linda Tillery from the Loading Zone and cut some tracks with her. And we didn't get a deal there, but just from signing Tower, it gave me experience to be able to work with a lot of great artists, you know. And eventually, my label Blue Thumb Records wound up signing the Pointer Sisters, and
Wow.
a lot of it came from that session.
So that was the name of your label, was Blue Thumb Records.
Yeah, I had a little piece of Blue Thumb Records. Bob Krasnow, who signed George Benson and the Funkadelics.
That's about you. Yeah.
He was the guy who signed Ike and Tina Turner.
Okay.
Handshake deal. That's why we lost him.
Oh man.
I broke the record, and then we lose him.
Oh man.
That's okay. I just had kind of bad luck with bands. You know, I'd find these bands. You know, I was this close to signing Santana, and the president sent somebody up there to listen to him, and the guy reports back that they sound like Tito Puente, and I no, it's not. This has nothing to do with Tito Puente.
Lord have mercy.
These are young street guys. They're like a gang, a street fighting gang, you know. And they've got something, but they got turned down. They got turned. Ahmet Ertegun turned them down, and said they were a jam band, you know. And then, you know, I'm going to talk about Pete's and Coke. Well, they started a band called Azteca.
Yes.
Same guy who turned down Tower. Now he's listening to me, because Tower Power went on to have a whole bunch of hits, you know. And so he comes out to San Francisco. I stick him in the backseat of my Bentley, and we're driving around we went to the Kabuki Theater where Azteca was practicing, and there were 20 people in the band.
It was so big.
Remember Rico Reyes and Wendy Haas, and I think Lenny White and Neil Sean had playing in there. And so the president of Electra Jack goes into the back room with, of course, Coke and Pete,
Yeah.
and they come out saying, well, Jack, I offered him a big deal, bigger than the Doors, because that's what it was going to take, because they had 20 members, and Coke keeps reminding them that we have 20 mouths. So Coke played him. He never was going to sign with Elektra. He signed with CBS, and they all signed for the same reason: Miles Davis.
Mm.
Now that's why Santana didn't sign with my label. They weren't going to sign anyway. Carlos told me, he says, I never would have signed with you. I said, Miles was my guy. So I just had bad luck with bands, but you know, I was right, you know.
Yeah, you definitely have an eye for talent.
Yeah, and I saw that you were gonna sign up the Pope in 1997. I saw a picture of you and the Pope. He was gonna make a. You said that he would have been a good draw.
He was a terrible voice. He couldn't carry a note.
That would be a good concert. I'd love to open up for the Pope. That'd be great.
I was interested though. How did you meet him? Did you put like a huge amount of something in the basket, or you know, how did you get to meet him?
That wasn't me. That was Bob Dylan.
It was, because
it was Bob Dylan. People kept saying you look like Bob Dylan. I said, well, we're both Jewish, you know. Well, I had a great time in this. You know, I've been doing this for 50-something years. I've always had a great time. You know, I just had these great opportunities to. I had a good ear for music, and for a hit record. You know, I listened to Moody Blues and Nights in White Satin. I broke that, and I broke "Help Me" by Joni Mitchell, and then I broke the biggest record I ever broke was the Chariots of Fire, and the label did not think it was a hit record.
Right.
And I said, well, look, you know, that's got a movie attached to it, and that's a hit single. I'm telling you, and it wound up selling 20 million albums, 10 million singles. So, yeah.
So, you know, I think the one thing that's really great is that you don't see this a lot in the business today, but you fought for your artist. I mean, you went to, you know, fisticuff,
yes,
and you say, hey, no, you got to listen to these guys. And it's almost non-existent. They're finding them on YouTube now. You know, it's like the business is completely decimated. I don't even know if there's a business anymore. You know,
no, it's different. It's different. You know, the music that I liked in the old days, you know, was that's my music. I'm old school, and that's not saying that what's happening today is not good.
Of course,
it's just different. I just don't hear a lot of great songwriters. You know, I don't hear the Paul Simons or Stevies or people like that. You know, the Lionel Richies. You know, Billy Joel. The really good songwriters. I just don't hear too many of them. You know?
Yeah, you have to look for it. You have to really search for it because there's so many more people out coming out. But you have to search. They do exist. That you have to find them. But you're right. The quality is definitely you know, taking a hit. But I just, in the needs of the actual industry backing up artists, I think that's what I see as non-existent. It's just you don't see people. It's kind of on you. It's like if you don't, you know, outsell your next record, they just drop you like a sack. You know, it's really ugly business.
Well, you don't need a label now.
Yeah.
True.
Okay. You really don't. I'm working with this girl from Napa. She's doing great. She's got 8.5 million followers, you know, and she's making a ton of money on Spotify.
Yeah.
We're gonna do a live streaming show with her. Her name is Limbo. Do you know Limbo? And she's got a mask on, so nobody knows what she looks like. Sort of like Gabby Wilson did.
Yeah, I like her. She's phenomenal.
Gabby when I met Gabby, all we talk about is old school artists that she liked. Because I asked her, she was 12 years old. It says, "Who do you like?" She says, "Dinah Washington." Dinah Washington, you're 12 years old. Nina Simone,
Yeah, no,
early
she's a,
Franklin. And look at her now.
well, you know, I gotta say this. I've known Gabby's father for a while, and those two did a tremendous job raising her. The few times that I got to meet Gabby, she was so polite. Yes, sir. You know, everything. I mean, she's just an incredible individual, and she's so gifted. I watched her. You know, the bass would be way bigger than she was. She's killing on bass, and she put that down and grabbed some sticks. You know, and I was just sitting there going, "Who is this, and why isn't she signed already?" And she was like 12.
Oh, they spotted her. They spotted her early, and then she met keys. But one of the great moments of being that I love being in this business is I did a show for breast cancer awareness down in Fairfield, and Rick Stevens. I managed Rick when he got out of the job after 36 years. Kind of ironic. He signed Tower Power, and then the lead singer comes out and he called me up and says, would you manage me, because I hear that, you know, Jeff, you know, people trust you. So I said, okay, let's do this. And so we did this show, and my opening act was Pete Escovedo. And I had Tony Lindsay, and Mick Gillette from Tower Power, and Tom Poliser from Tower, and goes up Gabby Wilson and Ken. And Rick goes to Gabby, I don't know any of your songs. I says, she goes, no, I'm here to play bass on What Is Hip.
Oh, you're kidding me. He's playing the Rocco? Jesus.
Yes. And so they did that, and they also did What You Won't Do for Love. And then Skylar Jett joined them, and they did background vocals to You're Still a Young Man. And there must have been 100 people there. Nobody knew about it. You know, it's just.
I love
it. We just had Skylar on the show, like our last episode. I mean, there's such a this like tight knit family of musicians, and they all kind of back each other up. And I think it's beautiful. I feel very honored to be part of it, and get to know a lot of these players. The Bay is kind of extraordinary in the means of what we have available here, our sound, and we are so blessed to have you, Jeff. And these stories are phenomenal, man. I am so glad. And you know, you've never told me about this all these years that I've known you. You've always just been like, yeah, we've always done business, but you never said, oh, by the way, I've promoted some of the biggest names in the business. That shows your level of humility, man. I appreciate that. And now you work with, you've worked with a lot of the labels. Verve Records was something I heard you mention in an interview. What was your connection with Verve?
Well, when I started in the business, one of the labels that I repped was Impulse Records, which were one of the great jazz record labels of all time. You know, Gabor Szabo. You there? Yeah. Gabor Szabo was on. Let me plug this baby in.
No worries. We're almost set, so we're good.
Anyway, George Benson came out with a record called Masquerade, you know?
Sure did.
And I used to go through the labels, through the catalogs, and I'd find obscure records, and I'd tell the head of the label, I'd say, why don't you just put a new cover on it? I did that with B.B. King live at the Regal, and we sold, when he did The Thrill Is Gone. And we sold like 500,000 of that album, which is amazing because it had only sold about 30,000 when it first came out. And then when George came out with Masquerade, I knew he had 2 records in the Verve catalog. So said, just take out the strings because it's a little overproduced for my taste, make it one album, put a new cover on it, and it wound up selling 300,000 albums.
That's
And
that's crazy.
it didn't cost anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All it did was you just put a new cover on it, and that was it. So I had a lot of fun doing what I'm doing, just.
Well, you're still doing it.
I just had a little part, I don't play any instruments. I don't sing very well. And,
Well, you know what? One thing I got to mention, this is something that a lot of people don't know, is what you were part of, the movement that you were part of was literally helping the movement of getting Black music out to the masses. You are a spoke in the wheel in getting that process. And I really admire you for doing that, because I remember watching MTV and seeing no Black people. And for a young kid, it impacts you in such a negative way to not see anything that you look like represented. Yeah. And to know that there were people out there like yourself to say, hey, this is BS. You know what? Come on. We got some great music here. In fact, some of the best music on the planet of all time is hiding under here. But, get your heads out of your butts, I really appreciate your tenacity in getting that done. And we are, we have to wrap it up, because I know that Zina has to do a meeting, but I want to say thank you so much. And we want to bring you back on if you would be willing to talk about more of your story, my brother.
I'm gonna tell you something. I never looked at a 45 and said, geez, that's a Black artist. I never, because I grew up in San Francisco and I hung out in Hunters Point and played. I mean, I just happened to be in a city that was diverse. Mm-hmm. So none of that stuff, I ran track, I played basketball, you play with different races and creeds and so it was nothing to me when I got a record. I didn't go, oh, it's a Black artist,
Yeah.
It just happened to be that way.
Yeah. No, I just admire you for doing it, because I mean, it was so much bigger than you probably while you were in it. It probably wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal in so many different ways. Yeah. So I thank you for that. And we want to thank you for being on Bay Legends, man. It's been a pleasure, my brother. And let's do this again. If you wouldn't mind coming on again and gracing us with your stories, man, we would love to do it.
I told you. I would,
That's some stories, brother.
Look, I'm 77 now and I'm still rocking, and I'm a very, very lucky guy,
Yes. Well, we're lucky to have you on the show, and thank you for those great stories. I still want to, when we get a chance to talk, I want to hear more about your James Brown stuff, because I work with the James Brown band, and I'll tell you what, I would be scared to all get out to have to go and talk to James Brown and get some money. I heard about that story about getting, because he was freakishly good at boxing, and carried a piece. He always had a piece on him too. So you were very bold.
I never would have met the Escovedos either. I mean, Pops is one of my favorite human beings. He's always been a sweetheart.
Thank you.
Never done anything else.
Yeah.
And he always takes time. He always takes time to, to say hello to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Too much. Yeah.
Thank you. I will let him know that for sure.
Oh no. He knows it. He's a delight. So I enjoyed this.
And man, be blessed and be safe out there with COVID. And when COVID is over, let's do some more shows, my brother.
I will. I got both my shots. I'm ready to rock.
Thank you, Jeff, so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice meeting
you. You take care. Bye-bye.